give me 5 minutes and I'll teach you how to comfortably play against the Ruy Lopez without having to worry about the D pawn attack. You see, one of the most annoying moves in the Ruy Lopez that most coaches don't tell you about is this pawn to D4 move, which appears later in the middle game. From our side, the ideal opening we want to play is the Filido, but we can't do that easily due to that D pawn. And just a friendly reminder, all of my courses are still on promotion. Yes, you still get 50% discount on all of them. That is, you will get a discount of 50% when you purchase any of my courses. So the Ruy Lopez begins with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6 and bishop b5. It looks like white's main intention is to get rid of the defender of the e pawn, but that's not the idea in the opening stage. They know you're not going to give up this pawn easily. The top played move here is pawn to s6. Some play knight f6, the Berlin defense. All these are great moves, by the way, but how about surprising your opponent with the move pawn to f5. This is called the Schliemann defense, or simply the Jaenisch Gambit. And just a little disclosure, I learned this opening from international master Chitumbo Mwale. I think it should be the only Zambian I am with a GM norm. I stand to be corrected. I watched his over the board game featuring this gambit and I was really inspired. What if white just takes the knight immediately? Here we can recapture with the d pawn, and after knight takes, we always have this classic queen d4 move. After knight f3, we simply take, and after queen e2, instead of taking right away, we have an option to go knight f6 or bishop d7 and continue with life. Now let me tell you the psychology behind the Jaenisch Gambit. At best, we just want to get rid of the d pawn so that white no longer has the option to go d4 and d5 in the middle game. See, the top played move is pawn to d3 in this position, after which you can simply take. And after pawn takes, now you can continue with your Filido defense like that, I mean if you so wish, featuring the Paris ideas, or begin with knight f6. Let's look at the Filido line first. d6, this is what people play. Bishop g5 will be a 1-0 move due to bishop e7. Same with knight g5, you can just go bishop e7. So in this position, most people play knight c3 in an effort to plant their knight on d5 later on. This is when you can go knight f6. After castle shot, bishop g4 is also another move you can try, but there's nothing wrong with bishop e7. The idea is to castle short. These are positions where you will see white retreating their ally squad bishop, stopping you from castling. But you can easily get rid of this bishop by going knight a5, attacking it. There's nothing much white can do. If bishop b5 check, again you have bishop d7. You will probably exchange bishops and choose where you want to castle, either long or short. Again, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, and pawn to f5. I said the whole logic behind this is to neutralize the d pawn after taking on e4. So you have two options, either to play in the style of the Filido defense, go knight f6, bishop e7 and castle short, or start with knight f6. This attacks the pawn on e4. The main line goes as follows. White usually castles, since they know you cannot take on e4 due to rook e1. I mean, you're going to be way behind in development. For example, if you carelessly take on e4, I mean, white can even play queen e2, not even rook e1. Well, the point is, if you go back, this is when they can take, and after pawn takes, look at this. So you don't have to take on e4. I mean, avoid taking free things in the opening stage if you are not sure of what you are doing. It is in these kinds of positions where you can again go back to the Filido pawn arrangement or play bishop c5 if you're brave enough. This is also playable since white doesn't have a d pawn, so they won't harass your pieces. Again, you will see white taking your knight. I mean, since their idea is to capture the e pawn, right? Here, I highly recommend you take with your b pawn. Say, what if they take this pawn for free? This is the main line, you guys. Magnus Carlsen has played this before. Hikaru has played this, Levon, and other strong super grandmasters. So you won't be the first one to lose a free pawn. In fact, this is the main theory. So you first of all castle short. Now here is the key move. To get back this pawn, you are going to use your light squad bishop. Just remember this principle. That's all. And again, if you think about it, this pawn structure on the center resembles that of the Paris defense. You can get my Paris defense course if you want to understand what I mean. You see, in this position, the pawn on e4 is hanging. So white is going to protect it in most cases. And this is when you can go bishop s6. Like I said, this should be the main move in your mind. Well, the plan is, if rook e1 is played, do you know that you can sacrifice your bishop on f2? And this automatically wins the rook. You see, if king takes, you simply have knight g4 check, not knight takes. You have knight g4 check. This is discovery check. You're going to get back that. If king g1, don't fall into this trick. You're not checkmating anything. I mean, just get back your piece. And if you count material, we have equal number of pawns. White has an isolated pawn, and Stockfish says black is doing better. So bishop s6 is the key move you want to remember. The game may continue as follows: queen h5, after which you go d6. If bishop g5, to claim a tempo back, you can even play queen b8 in this position, since white has to do something, right? If they play pawn to b3, you even have moves like queen b4, and you continue playing your chess. There's nothing that is happening on this side of the board. Maybe your long-term plan can even be going rook f7 and rook a f8. So once again, after exchanging pawns on e4, it's all up to you to go the Philido way or start with knight f6, which is the move I like, since it poses immediate pressure on e4. And after castle shot, the main move, you can go bishop c5, and after bishop takes, you take back with your b pawn. If knight takes, just remember your key move is bishop s6, but you only want to play that after securing your king. Since this is still under attack, they are always going to play knight c3, defending that, after which you can go bishop s6. But after playing bishop s6, if white doesn't move their rook, and let's say they play knight d3, which also attacks your bishop, here you can simply put your bishop on b6 and say, after this bishop pin, try this, queen e7. Queen e7 looks like you're going to lose the knight, but nope, you have bishop takes d3. Even if they start with ef, you just recapture with your pawn, because this trade is only good for black. You still have your bishop, which is very active, and should they ever try to attack you, here you can even go bishop takes, and that's it. They are losing the rook, because if rook takes, you have queen takes, that's check, and here you can even play rook a e8, or just oversimplify things, take. Well, the point is, after rook takes and rook takes, this will be checkmate. One more time: e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, pawn to f5, and d3. Here you just take, and after de, congrats, you just managed to get rid of the d4, d5 problem. So up to you to go the Philido way or my way, knight f6. This attacks the pawn. Now, there's a line that I deliberately left out. What if white takes your knight right here, thinking they are going to win a free pawn? Well, first you take like this, and if knight takes e5 happens, you play this in the style of the Petrov. Here you can go queen e7. That's how you're going to get back that pawn. Pawn to f4, for example, you can play d6 if you want, and after knight takes c6, this is a blunder due to queen takes e4 check. You're going to win that knight. Oh, there's queen e2, but you have queen takes, and after king takes, bishop b7 will win you a free pawn, or at least you're gonna get back a pawn with tempo, going straight into the endgame. So after queen e7, instead of pawn to f4, white may also try bishop f4. Again, you just go pawn to d6. They'll most likely take the pawn on c6, after which you go queen takes. After queen e2, you go queen takes. Once again, this will be the same story. After bishop b7, you're going to get back a pawn. So it appears that the most sensible thing white can do in this position is to retreat their knight, maybe back to d3 in this position, or knight f3. I mean, again, if you don't want to exchange queens right away, there's another move you can play rather than taking on e4. You can go bishop s6. But speaking about endgames, queen takes e4 is what I advise you should play, so that after queen e2, you go straight into the endgame like this. I mean, the whole purpose of chess is to go into the endgame and try to win the game from there. I mean, you don't want to continue playing forever. It is in this position where you can go bishop s6 check, and if king d1, you just castle long and continue playing chess. You are way ahead in development. You have other moves like bishop b4 and knight e4. But again, if you just want to keep the queens on the board, you can go bishop s6 first. If pawn to e5 or knight c3, something like that, you have moves like queen b4 check, knight d5, or even queen e6. White can't castle short, say bishop f4. Now you go knight d5, bishop g3, queen g6. You see, the thing is, white can't castle because of your light squad bishop. And that's why being down a pawn temporarily is not much of a stretch. Knight c3 or knight d2, you have bishop b4. So let's say knight d2, you can still go bishop b4, if c3. Here you can even sacrifice, because after pawn takes, you are attacking the rook. White still can't castle short. Rook c1 and checkmate, because the only move here is queen e2, after which you can checkmate your opponent like that. So this is if you don't want to exchange queens very early in the opening stage. And before we move on to the next line, there is this other variation which involves the annoying bishop g5 pin, which most people are playing nowadays. Let me show you. After knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, and pawn to f5. Of course, white continues with d3, so that once you take and they take back, they just wait for you to play knight f6, which is my top recommendation, for them to pin your knight. At times, they can pin your knight later in the middle game. But let's say knight f6, and white plays bishop g5 immediately. The main line begins as follows. You go bishop c5. You see, this kind of poses a little threat on f2, in that if white thinks they can win a free pawn on e5 by first of all taking the knight, so that after you take, they can now go ahead and take nap. That's not going to happen due to bishop takes f2. The idea is if king takes, you have knight takes e4 check, and you're going to win back that piece. You play pawn to g6 and retreat your knight back. That's the whole reason why we have to play bishop c5. So all I'm saying is, against pins like these, just develop your dark sword bishop normally, play pawn to d6 and castle short. You know, sometimes you can start with bishop b4 check. The whole idea is to provoke c3, so that white will no longer be able to develop their knight on c3, and I mean, they won't even have time to put pressure on our knight. Only after this move should you play bishop c5. Again, we are back to c5, right? Bishop c5. Again, white should not take like this due to bishop takes f2, which is why you will see most advanced players castling by now. So what do? Theory states you have to play pawn to h6, trying to ask white to take your knight so that you can recapture back with your queen. If they maintain the pin, you first of all want to protect your pawn on e5, right? So you can do it this way, and that's what I said. Play bishop c5 first, then d6. Again, in the bishop g5 line, just think of bishop c5 and d6, but you can do this slowly by involving other intermediate moves like bishop b4 check, bishop c5, h6, and then you play d6. Chess is that simple. Most people here play knight bd2, after which you can now put your king to safety. There's nothing white can do. b4, bishop b6, a4, a5, or s6. If bishop takes, you're always happy to take back with your b pawn. I mean, this is a very solid pawn structure on the center of the board, and you're okay. You can play queen e8, queen g6, and bishop g4 in the near future. You see, at times, white may wait for you to do whatever you want after knight f6. Instead of them playing bishop g5, they may first start with knight c3, holding on to their e4 pawn, as I stated earlier. Once again, you want to play bishop c5. So this bishop c5 move is not a blunder in the Schliemann defense. It is in this position where we saw that white can take, after which you should take back with your b pawn, and remember to play bishop a6, which is your key move after castling short. But again, white may still go bishop g5, pinning your knight. Maybe they now intend to go knight d5 on the next move. So to simplify the position, this is where you can go bishop b4 or pawn to d6 immediately. I love bishop b4 more than d6 in that bishop b4 stops knight d5. So bishop b4. Again, if bishop takes happens, you always want to take back with your b pawn. Looks like white is going to be capturing your e pawn most of the times, but see you guys. Here is the rule of thumb. We don't care about the e5 pawn in the Jaenisch Gambit, because most of the times we can easily get this back. And you should always play queen e7 if that happens, at least in most cases. In this case, even castling works, or bishop takes right away. So let's go queen e7. This attacks the knight immediately. This time, if knight d3 also attacking that, you can go bishop takes, messing up white's pawn structure on the queen side, then get back at least one pawn. Now material is equal and you have a better pawn structure. Queen e2, queen takes, white can't castle, and then you go knight e4, attacking the bishop and that. At worst, you can even get rid of that bishop or just castle short and retreat your knight back to d6 then put it on c4. So what am I saying? Whenever white plays bishop g5, always think of two moves, bishop c5 and sometimes bishop b4. Again, after bishop g5 and knight c3, to stop knight d5, always play bishop b4 and get rid of that knight. At any point in time, if white takes your pawn on e5, think of queen e7, kind of the Petrov strategy. You're going to get back this pawn in one way or another, especially if your dark square bishop is on b4. You have d6 and takes. Now back to the initial position of the Jaenisch Gambit or the Schliemann defense. One might say, nah, it's not every time white plays pawn to d3. Of course, even though that's the top played move in the Lichess database, there are many things that white can do in this position. For example, they can even choose to hold on to this by playing knight c3. First, what do you do? Well, my top recommendation is if white doesn't take, you'll be the first one to take. It's not a big deal. After knight takes, here you can even go knight f6, challenging that knight. They mostly take, after which you take back with your queen. If d4, you can even consider to go e4. If queen e2, you can even play pawn to d6. If you just want to be stingy, the best is to play bishop e7 in this position. Of course, it looks like white is going to win a pawn, but in this specific line, you want to take back with your b pawn so that you have an option to go d5 in the near future, like this. So let's say queen takes. This is what most people are afraid of. We have 6 pawns, white has 7, but Stockfish is saying position is dead equal, if not black having a slight advantage. So here you can just castle. After queen takes, you have bishop takes, castle shot, and now the most important move to remember, c5. If you play d5, chances are white is gonna equalize like that. By the way, d5 is not a bad move. You can play that if you want, or d6, but c5 kind of stops pawn to d4. So white will start playing passively. Now you can go d5 yourself or bishop b7 first. So this kind of resembles the two knights defense, which is why Stockfish favors black, even though we are down a pawn. I mean, black is behind in development. So yes, in some cases, you'll be losing a free pawn on e5, but the key is to be quick in development. Again, back to the Jaenisch Gambit, there is this other tricky line you must know, which involves the early d4 pawn push. If this happens, you first of all want to take on e4, attacking the knight, and after knight takes e5, that's when you take. After pawn takes, very important to go c6, so that on the next move, you get back your pawn like that. You also have d5 in the near future. That's how you handle the d4 line. I mean, they can play d5, but this only allows you to take, and after this, dc comes with an attack. There's that, and there's no good square for this bishop, by the way. If bishop f1, we can just go d5. No need to worry about this. If queen takes, we have knight f6, bishop e7, and castle shot. Instead of knight takes or d5, if white starts with bishop takes c6, we want to take back with the d pawn. The knight is still under attack. They have to do something. Knight takes e5, then knight f6 to stop queen h5 check. Next, we're going to play bishop d6, castle shot. Lastly, you will see white taking the f5 pawn. This is called the Jaenisch Gambit accepted. The move order here is very easy. Start with e4, and after queen e2, you go queen e7. They can't play knight d4 due to knight takes. So they first of all capture the knight on c6, after which I recommend you capture back with your d pawn. Now that is under attack. If knight d4 is played, you have plenty of things to do, such as knight h6, knight f6, or my favorite, queen e5, because this is an attacking move. Once the knight moves, you capture back that pawn and castle long. In most cases, white plays c3. If that happens, you always have pawn to c5. Queen d6 is also playable. So the purpose is just to drive that knight away and capture that. If knight b5, threatening to capture on c7, you go s6, d4. If queen takes, they'll capture on c7, so you have to go queen e7, and once the knight goes back, that's when you capture on f5. If queen h5 check, a computer move, the best you can do is to play king d8, and that's it. The knight has to go back, after which you go knight f6, attacking the queen, also defending that. The moral of the story is sooner or later, you are still going to get back your Jaenisch pawn. Pawn takes, queen takes, and that's it. Just a matter of time before castling by hand and involve your rooks into the game. Word of the day, don't be worried when you lose your e-pawn. That's theory. It is supposed to happen, but most importantly, you have to be quick in development to equalize the position. And don't be afraid to exchange queens in the opening stage if that's what the position demands. In most cases, the Jaenisch Gambit favors black. Now check this out, you guys. If you want to learn more about these kinds of tricks or similar opening ideas like the ones I just shared, you can watch this video that has popped up on the top left. Another video that I highly recommend you check out to skyrocket your rating is this one that has popped up on the top right. But if you love Gambit videos, you can check out the video that has popped up on the bottom left. And if you are a lover of chess traps like myself, feel free to click on the video that has popped up on the bottom right.